We have been discussing about the various aspects of Needham biology. We have seen the distribution of Needham and its various species. We have also been discussing the morphology and anatomy of the sporophytic generation of Needham. We have talked about the morphology and anatomy of root and leaves so far. So let us continue our discussion towards the morphology and anatomy of Needham leaf. As far as the Needham plant is concerned, the leaf of Needham resembles dicotyledons in the shape and venation. The leaves are simple, dorsiventral, large, oval shaped with reticulate venation and entire margin. The short shoots are mostly without branches and bear 9 or 10 decussatively arranged leaves on each shoot. The vertical section of a leaf shows distinct cellular organization. The epidermis is uniseriate and has undulating walls with a thick cuticle. The mesophyll is distinguishable into palisade and spongy tissues. The palisade consists of a single layer of columnar compact cells containing numerous chloroplasts. Below it, loosely arranged chlorophyllous lobed cells with large intercellular spaces are present. In addition, it shows the presence of sclerites near the lower epidermis, which are stellately branched. Fibers and latex tubes are much abundant, and especially in the midrib region. The stomata in the leaf are confined to the lower epidermis and are irregularly oriented. The pattern of stomatal development is haplochilic. In this type, the stoma has two guard cells are derived from a single mother cell, and a subsidiary cell originate from a different initial. The vascular bundles are collateral and are arranged in a curve. Xylem consists of tracheids, vessels and parenchyma. They are well differentiated protoxylem and metaxylem. They face the upper and lower epidermis respectively. The phloem is arranged in regular rows just beneath the xylem and composed of only sieve tubes and phloem parenchyma. Thick-walled pit cells form a patch outside the phloem. This entire structure can be understood with the help of these diagrams. So, in a cross section, the outermost layer has a upper epidermis, and on this upper epidermis are present a thick cuticle. Now, just below the upper epidermis, elongated cells are found which have chloroplasts present in them. They are called as upper palisade layer. Below these columnar palisade layer are found loosely arranged chlorophyll containing parenchymatous cells. These are spongy tissues. Now, in the midrib region, the vascular bundles, they are arranged in patches. Towards the lower side, the epidermis is interrupted because of the presence of stomata, and on the lower side we also encounter stone cells just below these vascular bundles. So, these vascular bundles, which are arranged in a curved manner, which is very prominent here in this diagram, they have xylem towards the upper epidermis. The xylem patches are found towards the upper epidermis, and phloem patches are found below the xylem towards the lower epidermis. And below each of these vascular bundles are found thick-walled cells, also termed as stone cells. So this curved arrangement of vascular bundle along with stone cells, this is a unique characteristic feature of Needham leaf. Now, as far as reproduction is concerned in Needham, the plant bear male and female cones on separate plants. That is, as we have already discussed, the genera of Nitopsida are mostly dioecious. They may occur solitary or in groups. They may be terminal or axillary in positions also. Here you can see a very beautiful picture of male and female cones of Needham. The male cone are found in bunch more in number, whereas female cones, they initially resemble more like a male cone, but later on they bear those ovules. The male inflorescence is a solitary or fascicled panicle. It is axillary on shoot and unbranched. It has a long axis on which several decussating pairs of bracts are present. These bracts connate along their margin to form cup-shaped structures which are called as cupules or collars. They are present on the axis at short intervals. When we talk about these decussate structures, a decussate structure is the one which are formed in pairs and they originate opposite to each other from the same location on a stem. A young strobilus appears compact because of a reduced axis with very short internodes, and the collars appear to be continuous in appearance. As the axis elongates, the collars get separated. The upper 2 or 3 collars in Needham pneumon are much reduced and sterile. In the axils of these bracts are present 3 to 6 rings of 12 to 15 male flowers, and above them a single ring of 5 to 7 imperfect female flowers or abortive ovules are also found. So each male flower is stacked and has 2 unilocular anthers at its tip, which is enclosed in a sheath of bracts. These sheath of bracts are also called as perianth. So the stalk elongates at maturity and the anthers come out of the perianth cover through a slit. Now, during the development of male strobilus, the collars are formed in an acropetal succession. The arrangement of male cone can be understood with the help of these pictures and diagrams. Here we can see the arrangement of male anthers, and each of them they have collar at their base. We can understand this with the help of this diagram, where we have the microsporangium. These microsporangium, they bear these microspores, and these microsporangium, they are covered at the base with the help of covering, also called as collar or perianth. Now inside these collars, these microsporangium, they are arranged, and within these microsporangium, microspores are found. Now let us talk about the female strobilus and the female gametophyte. Initially, at young age, the female strobilus appears almost like a male strobilus. Well, however, when it matures, the distinction becomes very prominent, and in a female strobilus, a ring of 4 to 10 ovules, also called as female flowers, are present above each collar. The male flowers are absolutely absent, but we have also seen that in case of a male strobilus, the upper rings are abortive female cones. All the ovules, they look similar initially, but they are later on, when they attain maturity, they have a very distinct structure. The upper few collars usually lack ovules and are thus sterile. In Netum pneumon, the female Strobilus possesses pairs of opposite sheathing bracts in the axils of which are present 5 to 6 whorls of ovules in each whorl. Here we can see the presence of female Strobilus in this diagram, and after maturity they have a very distinct mature ovule. Each ovule represents a female flower. The ovule may be stalked or subsessile. Nearly 4 to 10 ovular primordial cells differentiate from an annular meristem or the rim below each collar of the female cone. The ovular primordium lies on a cushion. The three coverings, the outer covering, inner and the integument, arise in a centripetal manner around the ovule. Of the three envelopes, the outer one differentiates first, often called as perianth. This envelope gets thickened and somewhat succulent at maturity. The perianth has its own vascular supply. The outer epidermis shows stomata also. The middle envelope is next to form and represents the outer integument, which gets differentiated to form an outer fleshy layer and inner stony layer. The female flowers in male cone lack this envelope. The apical part forms a tapering ring shaped rim. Stomata differentiate in the outer epidermis. The laticifers are formed at the time of pollination. Major part of the stony layer of the seed coat is formed by the fibrous elements and sclerids in this envelope, and there are two set of vascular bundles in outer fleshy layer and a single set in the inner integument. The third and the most inside envelope or the inner integument is the last to be formed and is fused with the nucellus in the lower part. The inner integument elongates considerably and forms a micropylar tube, and they are the so-called style projecting beyond the apical cleft of the outer envelope. Now this part starts degenerating before or at the time of pollination. The apical lobes of this envelope becomes prominent and their numbers varies from 7 to 10. The lobes are large and irregularly twisted. Unlike the other two envelopes, this layer lacks both stomata and sclerids. Now we can understand this entire structure of these ovules with the help of this diagram. Now here we can see that a female Strobilus has multiple ovules in a ring fashion, and among these multiple ovules, a couple of them enlarge and become the functional ones. When we look into the structural details of each of these ovules, we will find that in the center is the female gametophyte. From the outside, we have three very distinct layers of tissues. The outermost is also called as outer envelope. The outer envelope is thick and fleshy, and each of this outer envelope has two vascular supplies on opposite sides, and these vascular supplies then further branch out and give the nutritional and conducting facility to this entire outer envelope. Now then there lies the middle envelope, which sometimes gets converted and becomes sclerenchymatous. Now below this outer and middle envelope lies the innermost integument. The outer and middle envelope, here this name has been wrongly put. So the outer and the middle envelope, they form the bracteoles. They turn woody, and sometimes they turn very strong and functions as a protective structure. The innermost integument is very much functional and play a very distinct role during the process of fertilization. So what happens, the innermost integument, they come out from the apical portion of outer envelope and they form a 7 to 8 lobed apical structure. Now this is the place where the fertilization, during the process of fertilization, the pollen grains would land, and this also acts as a style, because this is the place, this is the track which will be followed by the pollen tube, and the male gamete will fertilize the female gametophyte. And inside this innermost integument lies parenchymatous nutritive tissues called as nucellus, and within the nucellus lies the female gametophyte, which has egg cells present in it. So a very interesting feature of the female gametophyte is the absence of archegonia. So for the first time we have seen that there is no structural archegonia which is present in the female gametophyte, but still we study Netum as one of the members of Archegoneti. So let us understand how gradually the development of female sex organ has also occurred across the various groups of archegoniates. When we talked about bryophytes, the entire life cycle was dominated by gametophytic generation, and the female gametophyte had a very prominent archegonia with swollen venter, neck and neck canal cells, and at the tip of the neck canal cells were present the cover cells. When we moved from bryophytes towards pteridophytes, we could see that the archegonia were although present, but they were very much reduced. The number of neck canal cells were hardly 3 to 4 cells. And when we further moved from pteridophytes towards gymnosperms in the class Cycadopsida or in the class Coniferopsida, the archegonia were present, but they were very much reduced. But in the class Nitopsida, and when we see archegonia in Netum, we hardly find any formal structure which we can call archegonia. The free nuclei get distributed in case of, now let us talk about the Netum female gametophyte. The free nuclei get distributed more towards the chaliceal end and very less at the micropylar end. Although all nuclei at micropylar end are capable of forming eggs, but only a few of these that actually forms eggs that can be easily demarcated from rest of their enlarged size and dense cytoplasmic sheath around them. The most intriguing part of the egg development in Netum is that all the eggs do not mature simultaneously, nor all the pollen tubes reach the gametophyte at the same time. Differentiation of additional eggs continues even after fertilization of the first one. So this is also one of the mechanisms of ensuring a better chance of fertilization and formation of more number of seeds. So the strategy of fertilization has also gradually got evolved, and now the success rate of fertilization is also being ensured that more chances of fertilization do take place. The gametophyte, which for most of its part is free nuclear, starts becoming cellular in its upper portion. Soon after, one of the eggs is fertilized, and eventually the upper part of the gametophyte becomes almost cellular. Now, as far as the pollination in Netum is concerned, it is of anemophilous type. That means the pollens are shed and disseminated by wind. Now, this dissemination and shedding of wind takes place at 3 nucleate stage. That means when pollen grains are having 3 nuclei, that is the stage when these pollens are disseminated with the help of the wind. The tip of the micropylar tube becomes flared and lacerated. As the fluid evaporates, the pollen grains are sucked into the micropylar canal and reach the pollen chamber. The pollination drop, which is rich in sugar, is exuded at the tip, and they eventually collect the pollen, and they also give way of these pollen tubes towards the female gametophyte. A pollen chamber is formed at the apical portion of the nucleus. When megasporogenesis is finished, the cells in the upper region starts degenerating. As a result, a shallow pollen chamber is formed into which pollen grains will be lodged. The cells between the pollen chamber and female gametophyte are gorged with starch grains. The growing endosperm, that is female gametophyte, nearly consumes the nucellus, and in a mature seed, the cells in the apical portion becomes cutinized and they almost persist. At the time of pollen germination, the exine of pollen grain is discarded and entine grows into a pollen tube which traverses the nucellus through the intercellular spaces by secreting enzymes. The tube nucleus migrates into the pollen tube, and during fertilization, both the male nuclei are discharged into the egg cell. One of the male nuclei enlarges slightly and travel towards the egg nucleus. The other nucleus remains in the periphery of cytoplasm, and gradually it degenerates also. The only distinguishing feature of the zygote are its spherical shape and dense cytoplasm. Both the cells may become functional if 2 eggs happen to be in the vicinity of the pollen tube. Now, during post-pollination, a ring-shaped swelling arises just above the insertion of inner envelope. Another swelling or proliferation develops in the apical part beneath the pollen chamber. Double fertilization has often been reported in the genus Netum. It occurs regularly and very frequently in Netum nemon. As started earlier, that the spermatogenous cell forms 2 equal non-motile male cells. Since both the male gametes are functional, they can fertilize 2 eggs simultaneously lying adjacent to each other. In this manner, 2 or several zygote nuclei may be produced per sac. After fertilization, each zygote nucleus develops into an embryo, but usually only one attains maturity in the end. Now, as far as the seeds in Netum is concerned, the seeds are mostly oval or elongated, and its color ranges from green to red. The seeds are shed at a stage when the embryo is not fully formed. The nucellus represents a thin strip at the apex, and the endosperm becomes massive, surrounded by 3 distinct layers of seed coat. The outermost layer happens to be fleshy parenchymatous and free from base to the apex and possess sclerids. The middle layer of seed coat is formed by exostome. It is hard and is the real protective layer of the seed coat. It grows above outer envelope and completely surrounds micropylar tube. It is differentiated into three zones: epidermis, palisade and a lignified tissue. The innermost seed coat is thin with parenchyma and lignified cells. The embryo present in the vicinity of endosperm is divisible into a radical, hypocotyle and two cotyledons in addition to a prominent feeder. The feeder is two bigger than cotyledons. There is always a time lag between seed shedding and seed germination. In case of Nitum nimon, seeds are shed in April and germinate in the month of September, whereas in Nitum ula they take 1 year also to germinate. The germination is always epigeal. What happens in epigeal germination? The radicle comes out first and forms a taproot with root cap. The hypocotyle elongates and pushes the cotyledons out of the seed in response to light. Cotyledons come out and turn green, resembling the foliage leaves, which wither at a later phase only after formation of a pair of plumular leaves. These plumular leaves are real foliage leaves. So that was all about the reproductive aspects of Nitum, that is the male and female sex organs, the male and female gametophytes, the fertilization process, pollination and the formation of seeds. Now let us have a very quick look towards the economic importance of Nitum. In many of the countries, the Nitum nimon is cultivated, such as in Malaysia and Indonesia, and they are eaten and they have edible seeds. The seed kernels of Nitum nimon are molded into cakes. Seeds are also eaten after boiling or roasting. The young leaves and inflorescence are eaten as vegetables in many parts of the country. The plant also yields a fiber from which ropes are made. Nitum ula kernels yield oil, which is employed for massage and as it possesses anti-rheumatic properties. Nitum montanum is reported to possess pesticidal properties. The bark of Nitum latifolium yields a strong fiber that is employed for making nets and ropes. In Africa, the leaves of Nitum africanum are employed in the treatment of sore throats, enlarged spleen and as a cathartic also. So we can also understand that Nitum has a very important economic significance also apart from the evolutionary significance. I hope I have been able to give a very broad aspect and broad idea about the biology of Nitum and thus the various aspects of the class Nitopsida. Thank you so much for your patient listening.